Yemen's Houthis rebels are now on their way to the peace talks in Sweden. As the UN warns today, the humanitarian crisis in the country will likely get even worse next year.
We think that 24 million people in Yemen, that's 75% of the population, will need humanitarian assistance.
The UN says Yemen's government needs billions to keep it running, on top of $4 billion in humanitarian aid. A war between Houthi rebels and Yemeni forces has lasted now almost 4 years. Thousands of people have been killed and millions face starvation. Bessma Momani is a senior fellow at the Centre for International Governance Innovation. She joins us tonight from Waterloo, Ontario. Bessma, last time around they tried to hold peace talks and the Houthi delegation didn't even show up. So I guess it's a good sign that they're en route.
It is, and this time it took the UN envoy, Griffith, to actually go on the same plane as the Houthi rebels, because last time around they just weren't confident that they would make it there alive, quite frankly. So this is the kind of intervention that the UN has had to have, a very personal one, obviously, a risk to Mr. Griffith himself. But indeed, they're on their way, and that's definitely a good sign. The Hadi government is now going to follow, but presumably it'll be a lot easier for them to travel than the rebels.
There are so many players involved in this conflict, so it's going to be a complicated process. I mean, can you give me an idea of who will actually be involved in these formal discussions?
Well, usually there's people who are in the room, and then there are many people who are not in the room, but frankly are part of the discussion. And so it's the Houthi rebels, of course, as well as the Hadi government. This is the internationally recognized government of Hadi, who has support from the Saudis and the Emiratis. They will be in the room with the United Nations mediators. And of course, I think there will be other actors that will be called to in the background, namely the Saudis, I think the Emiratis as well, and possibly the Americans. As far as Iran, whether or not Iran is really being able to dictate to the Houthi rebels, that's a bigger debate beyond this show. Some people believe that they are indeed a proxy of the Iranians. Others suggest there's just an alliance. So either way, I think there probably is going to be some input by the Iranians as well. And clearly, I think it's going to take a great deal of personal effort on many people's part to try and find a resolution.
Bessma, what's the first thing they have to do? As I mentioned, it's a complicated conflict that has now been going on for so many years with so many players. What's the first thing when they sit down at the table that they need to work out?
Well, I mean, I think the one thing that everybody wants to see is some sort of ceasefire around Hodeidah. That's the port that basically brings in 80% of all food and medicine. And this is a country that is pretty much almost all food dependent on imports. And so it really needs to have that port functioning. And that's one of the reasons why we see so much devastation and hunger in that country, is because of the inability, not just of enough food to come in, but also the food that comes in is very expensive. So that's one thing. But of course, there's going to need sort of a confidence building measures. We've already seen the Houthi rebels, some of the injured ones taken to Oman for treatment. There's supposedly a prisoner swap of about 2,000 Houthi rebels and government fighters that are going to be exchanged. That's a good sign. But there's lots and lots to do, frankly, to fix this country back again.
So has there been a prisoner swap before, or would this be the first one?
This would be the first, definitely. And I think it's a confidence building measure. Obviously, it doesn't sit well in a lot of people's minds, but unfortunately, it's a part of, like many conflicts of civil war type variety, that was required to try and get people to invest in a peace process.
Bessma Momani, I've got to leave it there, but thank you for your time. Appreciate it tonight.
Thank you.